Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's illuminating and exciting conversation about being Black in finance. I'm Nama Amadala, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at WCM. I am so excited to bring together these incredible panelists for this event. Thank you to each of our panelists for their participation. Each of them is a leader in their organizations and an inspiring role model to those in finance. We appreciate their time and their insights. A little bit about WCM. We are a national organization whose mission is to accelerate equity, diversity, and inclusion across the finance industry. We do this through education, research, and advocacy, and helping create initiatives that build the industry's knowledge of diversity and equity and encourage a shift to more inclusive work cultures and management styles. If you would like to learn more about WCM or you'd like to get involved, please follow us on social media and ensure that you visit wcm.ca for all the latest programming and events. Before our speakers introduce themselves and I dive into today's conversation on being Black in finance, I would like to recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples all across Canada. Our participants are located across the country and on other Indigenous lands with applicable treaties or unceded territories. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists today. Dennis Mitchell will be moderating today's conversation. Dennis, why don't you share with our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Nama. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you. Dennis Mitchell. I'm the CEO and CIO of Starlight Capital. I'm also a co-founder and director and member of the board of director of the Black Opportunity Fund and chair of the investment committee of the Black Opportunity Fund.
Thank you, Dennis. We can't wait to start the conversation. Loveland, Jemmy, if you could also briefly introduce yourselves before we begin.
Sure, I can jump in here. Good afternoon, everyone. I am super excited to be here at this BHM event today. My name is Loveland Toyo, and I currently work as a vice president in the FIC group at RBC Capital Markets. I'm excited to be here. Can't wait to start.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Onyejaka. I'm a vice president at the Capital Markets Strategy team at Bank of Montreal Capital Markets. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to an insightful conversation with Dennis and Loveland.
Amazing. Thank you all. And now that all of you have had the chance to meet today's panelists, let's dive into the conversation that we're here for. The screen is all yours, Dennis.
Great. And I'll maybe set the stage by saying that today's panel discussion is the result of the beginning of what I think will be a seismic shift in attitudes and culture on Bay Street. Before you can deal and address with a shortcoming or a challenge, you first have to acknowledge its existence. And with the finance industry in Canada making billions and billions each quarter, it's really difficult to assess that there are any significant challenges. But I do believe that empowering people beyond the traditional sort of representation we see on boards and in executive management suites in this country will truly lead to the fifth industrial revolution, and that'll be people. And there are no two better examples of that than Loveland and Jemmy. So enough from me. We'll get into the discussion with them. So to both of you, you both come from Nigeria, and that forms a significant part of your stories and who you are. There's a lot to talk about bringing your whole self to work, but research by Marlies Durer and Adia Harvey Wingfield shows that Black women specifically are judged more harshly for doing so. So maybe we'll start with Loveland. In what ways are you able to bring your whole self to work?
Okay, love this question. So, I mean, yes, Nigeria does form a significant part of who I am, who we are. And I often think and I reflect sometimes that in Nigeria, I wasn't a Black woman, right? In Nigeria, I was simply a woman. And before relocating to Canada, I never had to race identify. And I figured that this applies to a lot of Black people who are like me, newcomers, immigrants. And I often think about the extent to which those years where I lived as a majority influences my current Black experience, and it definitely was a shock to me to realize that my lived Black experiences were quite different from the lived experiences of Black people who always had to race identify as a minority in Canada. And to be honest, that's a powerful lens through which to view racial divides, former majority versus current minority. But that's a whole other topic. I will leave that for another day. I will say that the very heart of this discussion around the ability to bring my whole self to work, and I'm sure that this is the case, I feel like it's the case for most other Black professionals, is the need and the requirement for psychological safety. And I use the word requirement very deliberately here, not the desire for it, but the requirement for it, because it is a necessity that everyone wants to feel and be in a place where you do feel some psychological safety. And in my mind, I see like a visual representation of like a number line, right? Like a scale where there is maybe 70% psychological safety, there is 30% hesitation in bringing your whole self to work, right? And when that scale moves the other way, where maybe there's 30% psychological safety, then there is like 70% hesitation in bringing yourself to work. And so it almost just feels like the extent to which I feel psychologically safe in the workplace is kind of the extent to which I feel welcome and enabled to be different and to bring my whole self to work, to revel in the fact that I am different, to revel in the fact that I am unique, to not feel the pressure to fit in with the majority, to feel safe in sharing the bits of me that are unique and are different without fearing embarrassment or any sense of shame or sometimes being simply ignored. And it can feel hard to bring your whole self to work, right? When you're unsure if there really is space for different where you are. And like I said earlier, to a great extent, the level to which you feel empowered to bring your whole self to work is almost always in direct correlation with the level to which you feel that kind of safety. And that safety sometimes is dependent on the room that you're in, the organization that you work at, the teams that you belong to, and all of those different pieces. I like to say that if all of the investment world agrees, right, that diversification is important for investment with regards to expected returns, how can we not all unanimously agree that the same diversification of human capital in all of its ramifications is great, and also strive for that, right? That argument in my head, like, hey, same thing. But yeah, so I'm going to now bring it back to me and speak about ways in which I bring my whole self to work. And so when I get into a space or a room or an organization, I tend to first of all read the room. You're checking, is there room? If there's no room, is there action towards creating room? And if there is room, I mean, that's great. Then we go to the next level of, oh yes, okay, I can start to feel like I'm welcome here. And luckily I work at an organization that is committed to the same objectives, right? So that kind of makes it easier for me to work with people to create the spaces that I wish existed. It's not perfect. No, it's not. But then being in that space, and that's part of the journey for me in, bringing my 100% self to work, is also putting my hand to the plow to say, you know what, I wish this space really existed for others. And so I'm here and I'm going to work to create that space so that the next Black people coming in through the door will feel that sense of safety.
Well,
and I feel like the more
Loveland, your participation on today's panel is a huge step towards doing that. I want to pivot towards Jemmy and give her a chance to address the question as well. Jemmy, in what ways are you able to bring your whole self to work? You're on mute, Jemmy.
Oh no. Thank you, Dennis. And Loveland, I'll just steal something from Loveland saying create spaces where you wish existed. And for me, I was reading a HBR article and quickly it says that authenticity is a function of self-awareness. And being a very emotional, self-aware person, I realized quickly that I can't bring the wholesomeness of my Black Nigerian self to work because it's just not possible, truth be told. But I'm glad I work in an organization that promotes that. Most organizations today promote bringing your whole self to work. But before I bring myself to work, I need to check the room. I need to understand if there's space, if there's room, if I'm being heard, or if I can make opportunities to be heard. Part of the things I do is because I foster on relationships, so I go ahead and break the barriers down by reaching out, creating opportunities to speak, really getting to know people. And that has helped me, break the barriers down. I wear my heart on the sleeve and I show up at work. If you know me very well, you know that I'll probably have sent you a very nice email. Those things I have done specifically because I need to, be able to bring my authentic self to work, but still be able to break the barriers down at the same time.
Right. And I want to come back to something Loveland said in her first answer about the fact that while both of you are from Nigeria, in Nigeria you weren't Black women, you were just women. And pardon me for saying just. But Loveland, maybe I'll start with you and I'll just say to you, why is it important for junior professionals to see other Black professionals in leadership roles?
That is a very important question. And I think it's also a very key aspect of why representation really, really does matter. And representation, well, I mean, the major argument for representation is it shapes how minority groups or minorities or Black people in this case are viewed by society. And more importantly, how we view ourselves. And that's the overarching, I think, argument for it in my head. Because we hear all the catchphrases. If you can't see it, you can't aspire to it. How can you aspire to it? If you dream it, you can achieve it, right? But how are you convinced that you can achieve it when you can't see it, right? And so it's all of the same phrases that we hear, but it does speak to the fact that, and I think this example, I mean, many Black young girls in America now, I'm sure a lot of them would have aspired to be the first American president just because they've seen that, oh yeah, the vice president of America can be Black. So hey, they're aiming higher. And that is the same concept and the same principle, if you ask me, because when Black professionals in leadership positions are visible, the junior professionals not only feel represented, they also feel validated. And that validation often brings confidence and an assurance that you're in the right place. You're in the right place to grow, to be seen, to be heard. And it gives them that beacon of hope and makes them strive to be that. And most times they will strive to exceed that. And I dare say I speak for a lot of women where confidence, we know what confidence means to us, especially as professionals in a niche area like in finance. It affects the way we show up. It affects the way we speak up. It affects pretty much the way we advocate for ourselves and advocate for others as well. So honestly, I'd say, Dennis, to this question, I'd say there is power in believing that you can achieve something just because you can see that someone who looks like you has done it, right? And it's very, it's such an aspirational and inspirational viewpoint for junior professionals to see Black people in leadership.
Thank you, Loveland. And Jemmy, to you, the same question. Why is it important for junior professionals to see other Black professionals in leadership roles?
So growing up in Nigeria, we saw modeled for us successful Black people because Nigeria is predominantly Black. And so Loveland and I have had the opportunity to see modeled for us every day Black successful individuals at whatever level. Even in the Nigerian banking sector today, 1/3 of the CEOs today are females. And I take that into our industry in Canada. In Canada, if you look at the capital market space specifically, and across the industry, you could probably count the number of Black people in your organizations. Then you take it a notch higher and go to leadership. That's even a fewer number. Just like Loveland said, how do you become what you can't see? We have young professionals coming into organizations. How do we motivate them or allow them to aspire to things they can't see? It's not only having representation at leadership, at all cadence of the organization. And whilst we might not have, control over what our composition of our staff is today, I would say that organizations need to start looking at their pipelines, because only then would we send a clear message to young Black professionals today that they are welcome and they have opportunities to grow into senior leadership.
Excellent. And maybe, Jemmy, I'll stay with you for this next question. Women in Capital Markets Return to Bay Street program was essential in helping you both relaunch your careers in Canada. What recommendations do you have for fellow women of color who may be struggling to feel recognized or seen?
I used to say I didn't return to Bay Street. I actually came to Bay Street. And so I really understand what it feels like to be in a new country, relaunching your career, you know, dealing with new organizations, new norms. And I totally identify with that. I would say on the first level is control within what is within your control. And this is what I say to myself is, Jamie, speak up, amplify your voice, and most especially be comfortable in my skin. Like, keep the peace, maintain my mental health, because you need to be comfortable to be able to show up in those rooms and bring the best version of yourself to work. The other piece of it is leverage your mentors, sponsors, allies, people within your network. Use them, use resources that are available to you, because being seen and being heard is one thing. And the other thing is, to the organizations you work for, is promote spaces where Black people can feel welcome, or feel they can bring their best self to work. And lastly, for me, I would say that the job you do or what you do in an organization is just a piece of who you are. The wholesomeness of you is more than that. So I would say, look at the wholesomeness of what you do and who you are, and work on bringing the best version of yourself.
Well, thank you for that. And Loveland, I'll come back to you again. What recommendations do you have for fellow women of color who may be struggling to feel recognized or seen?
Echoing pretty much everything Jamie has said, also as a returner to Bay Street, I'll first of all say I see you. I've walked the path that you might be looking to walk, or the path that you're walking right now. So yes, we see you. And we both, I speak for Jimmy, I think in this regard, we both spend quite a bit of time outside of our day-to-day jobs, mentoring and coaching and talking to other Black women, specifically newcomers, right? Because we understand that journey, we understand that struggle to come into a new country and want to be seen and be recognized. And it can be tough. So I'll say a couple of things that Jimmy already said, but I'm going to add, lean into your support system, right? It can play a number on your mental health when you're thinking, oh my goodness, I used to be amazing, but right now I don't quite know who I am. I don't know where I fit anymore. Lean into your support system, people who understand and they can relate to your journey. And there will be a period of integration, but ride the wave, knowing that you'll cast anchor eventually. The next thing that Jimmy already said is use your network, right? Which does imply that you have to build one. And that can be tough for introverts particularly. And for me, my personal bit here, to make it less intimidating for me, was I approach networking as building relationships, getting to know people and giving them a chance to get to know me. When you have that pressure that, oh, I need to get a job, I'm networking for a job, it can be intimidating for a lot of people in a new space. So I approach it more like, hey, I'm trying to build relationships. I want them to get to know me. I want to get to know people, know how things work. And that makes it less intimidating for me. And I think the last thing I'll say is look around for places that you can get involved, right? Smaller groups where you can make valuable contributions, and where you can feel valued and feel seen. There's a couple of examples I can think of are community outreach, or for those who are parents at your children's school, and for those who are already working, maybe like new workers, I'd say maybe like employee resource groups. And all these things just help with getting your creative juices flowing, right? And all the skills that you have, you can still use. And it's a safe place to practice. It's also a safe place to develop new skills without that pressure of, oh my God, everyone is looking at me and I'm going to mess up. So that look for those kind of opportunities to stretch yourselves a bit, to get to understand how things work, and to feel valued and seen, knowing that you are making a difference, because it does feel good. So yeah, and the last one I'll say, let me just put one in there. If you ever feel like you need someone to remind you that you are amazing and that you will make it, I mean, DM me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure Jim will say the same thing. We'll be there to support you.
Excellent. Well, I think we're going to move in. We've got a little bit of time. We're going to move into the bonus round of questions here. And Loveland, I'll start with you. Each of us has a role to play in dismantling inequities, injustice, and exclusion. What are some examples of the ways our colleagues can contribute to helping eliminate anti-Blackness?
I mean, there is a lot of, obvious one is educate yourself, self-education. So I won't speak too much about that, because that is the very obvious first one. The other one I would say is self-awareness, right? And it starts from checking our own implicit biases. And to be honest, I think we all have them. I was listening to a TED Talk recently, and the speaker said something that really caught my attention. She said, first impressions are usually the basis for implicit bias. If I were to ask everyone on this, call, hey, who's ever jumped to a conclusion about someone just based on first impressions, I imagine that many hands will go up, mine included, at some point. So I'd say that is the first place to start. Identify what your bias is. Check your bias. Example, you're like, hey, oh, she has an accent. Goodness, I can't hear what she's saying. Is she speaking English? I better move on back to my own crew. That's one example. Another example is, talking about topics that people don't relate with at, social networking events. Hey, goodness, we're talking about hockey and snowboarding, and he hasn't contributed. Maybe he's not very smart. He's maybe Nigerian, just landing, and he's never played hockey. So that is just one place where you start to check your biases, because a lot of times it's I'd say to dismantle inequities and injustice and exclusion is maybe try to waive the first impressions, right? Practice more open-mindedness, especially of people not in the same groups as you. To actively contribute towards breaking the anti-Blackness or breaking anti-Blackness bias, you must first identify and challenge your own biases. Next, I would say make room. We've talked about spaces. We've talked about creating room. Be the includer. Be the person who said, you know what, there is a Black person on my team. And maybe at meetings, they struggle to have their voices heard, because when you're the only one in the room, sometimes your voice will get drowned. So make room for those voices. Make room for them when you say that they're struggling. Make room for their ideas. Make room to amplify their voices. That is something else that I think colleagues can do to eliminate anti-Blackness and to encourage inclusion. That's where I'll leave that at that.
Excellent. And Jemmy, we have a little bit of time if you'd like to answer as well. What are some examples of the ways our colleagues can contribute to helping eliminate anti-Blackness?
I think one that readily comes to mind is just be aware of your privilege and use it to amplify others' voices. It's not everywhere that, we can amplify our voices or speak up. So it's genuinely, speak up for your colleagues, and also just really be curious. And, aside from educating yourself, is be curious in the environment, and just really get to know people. Don't judge the book by its cover. You'd probably be surprised what you would see under.
So true.
Excellent. Well, if you haven't noticed, I've been taking notes through this whole conversation. So I want to thank both of you on behalf of myself and the others for sharing your experiences. And I'll yield the floor to Nama to wrap things up.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. First of all, thank you to everyone who joined us. And Demi and Loveland, people were loving what you had to say. The comments coming through were also positive, just speaking about the advice you've given. At WCM, we know allyship is about action and it's about engagement. And so, thank you to all of you for engaging with us. And Dennis, Jimmy, and Loveland, thank you for partnering with WCM this Black History Month to put allyship into practice. For anyone who is watching, if you are like Jimmy or Loveland and you're a mid to senior woman, you're looking to relaunch, or as Jimmy said, come to Bay Street, please join us at the Return to Bay Street info session. It's on March 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern, and you can come learn more about the program. Thank you again for joining us, and don't forget to follow us for more events and programming. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.